Go to Ambassador and Congressman Ann Wagner from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The U.S. faces two threats in Northeast Asia: North Korea and China. My father served in the Korean War also, and the stalemate in the region persists to this day. America's intervention in Korea in 1950 was a strategic success in preventing an important buffer region from becoming a zone of communist influence and strengthening the United States' hand in the, I think, broader Cold War. Cold War is over, but today the North still serves as a buffer state for China. Rapprochement between the U.S. and North Korea could possibly threaten China's influence over the Kim regime. Dr. Green, North Korea is useful to China because it distracts and challenges the U.S. and our South Korean alliance. At the same time, the Kim regime is vulnerable because of its strategic and economic dependency on China. China is North Korea's real long-term threat, not the United States. Do you believe China has an interest, Dr. Green, in our negotiations failing?
You know, I think we don't get to read about the Chinese debate because they don't have an open, vibrant political system like we do. But I think in Beijing, they're as confounded by North Korea as we are in many respects. I think you accurately captured their strategic view, but there are huge debates within the leadership compound in Zhongnanhai, I'm sure. I think from China's perspective, the operative approach is not today. Don't let North Korea collapse today. Don't have unification today. Kick this can down the road. In 10 years, in 20 years, in 30 years, China will be more powerful. It'll have more control over North and South Korea. China will be in a position to affect unification of a peninsula with no American alliance. So China has every incentive to lower tensions, but also to just kick this can down the road. And that's our problem. And part of the solution is our alliances, because China assumes it will be more powerful and have more influence over South Korea as time passes. But if we are faithful to our allies, if we're strong on trilateral defense cooperation with Japan and Korea, if we don't say we want to get out of Korea, if we do all of those things, we signal to China that North Korea is making our alliances stronger. Thank you very much, Beijing. So if you are worried about that, you need to put more pressure on your friends in Pyongyang. The game of alliances and U.S. and China is an essential part of how we get purchase on the North Korea problem.
How can the U.S. best manage China's interests as it negotiates with Kim? Because frankly, them kicking the can down the road is a negotiation failure at this point in time.
Yes, in the sense that we won't get a result. It's a success for China, and interests converge with North Korea because it just sort of prevents the U.S. from taking action. Look, we had the six-party talks. They failed to get North Korea to denuclearize. I was involved in that at the time. One useful thing about it was it got China, Russia, Japan, Korea all around the table. They all have equities. Only China, North Korea, U.S., and South Korea would be in a peace negotiation to replace armistice. We will need a broader diplomatic framework that gets.
I'm running out of time, Mr. Klingler. Is it possible to check the growth of Chinese power through our negotiations with Kim? Namely, what could we do to turn the North into a buffer zone for our own interests?
Well, I think the North Korean-Chinese relationship is strained. It's more strained now than under the previous leaders in North Korea. 5,000 years of history and 1,000 invasions or so have caused North Korea to have a very suspicious view of its neighbors. They see it as a shrimp amongst whales. Each of the leaders in North Korea has sort of warned that China is a bigger threat to North Korea than the U.S. Because of its intent to influence North Korea. So the North Korean nuclear program was a response to both feeling that both the Soviet Union and China were not going to protect North Korea to the degree that they needed. So I think North Korea is playing all these countries, all these neighbors off against each other. The thing with the alliances is that they're a multi-purpose tool, so that they are not only deterring and defending against the North Korean threat, but they're also serving to protect not only U.S.
Thank
but
you.
allied interests.
Thank you. I hate to interrupt, but Mr. Denmark, we know Kim has been talking with Xi Jinping throughout this process. China has lost influence in North Korea's top circles of power. But what role is she playing in our negotiations? Do you think China has the ability to influence Kim as he enters negotiations with the U.S.? And how?
I do believe that Xi Jinping has a role to play. In fact, I think his primary message from all these meetings that he's been having with Kim Jong-un is to show that China has a critical role to play, and China will not be bypassed. The most important role that China will have in these negotiations will be in maintaining economic pressure. As the Trump administration has said, they want to make sure that North Korea remains under significant economic pressure until it makes significant steps towards denuclearization. The challenge, of course, is that the vast majority of international trade for North Korea goes through China. And China has in the past proven inconsistent, you can say, in its willingness to engage those sanctions and to enforce those sanctions. One of the challenges that we're going to have going forward is that many in China, as Dr. Green mentioned, many in China increasingly see dynamics on the Korean Peninsula through the lens of geopolitical competition with the United States. And if China sees progress in some area as being, it sees increased sanctions, for example, as being in American interest, they may be one reason why China may be less willing to enforce some of those sanctions because they see it potentially as helping the United States.
Yes, thank you. Time has expired. I appreciate the chair's indulgence. I yield back.